Hi everyone, I hope that you all had a nice and relaxing summer break, and I'm delighted to moderate this Back to Work webinar on remote work and risk management. So why this topic? Because in Ferma's COVID-19 survey report of last year, we found evidence to suggest that remote working going forward is being treated as a strategic priority for many organizations. And while many companies had flirted with the idea of flexi work and some companies also tried it out, the pandemic prompted a quantum leap forward in people working remotely. And virtually all projections anticipate that the post-pandemic workforce will be relatively more remote. Although remote work is not possible for all people, like workers in factories or in shops, of course. So clearly, organizations and individuals change behaviors, and the risk landscape was also altered. But new opportunities and challenges arose, but also some familiar challenges like cybersecurity became more pressing and in a different way than before. So hence the question, how to manage this risk when all your staff are more virtual than ever? Cybersecurity and operational resilience are two of Ferma's priority areas, and remote work is clearly linked to both of these areas. But when you dip deeper into the topic, as we are about to do today, it becomes clear that remote work is relevant from many angles: HR, legal, safety, security, but also from a sustainability point of view. So this is why, before the summer, Ferma set up a project group with our members, and two of whom are speaking today. And together, we are working on a tool that aims to help risk managers navigating through this topic. The goal of the tool is to provide a framework for considering the risk, but also the opportunities related to remote work, as well as how to prioritize resilience in this change environment. And this webinar aims to provide you with an overview of some organization approach to remote work and the risk and opportunities faced. We will be holding a second webinar later in the year to present the tools that I've just mentioned. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by three outstanding speakers. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Sabine Desantoine, who is Head of Regulatory and Conduct Compliance Advisory at ING Belgium. And Sabine is also the former president of Belrim, the Belgium Risk Management Association. Laurence Ekman, who is the Vice President Risk Management at Electrolux Group and is a member of the board of Ferma. And Gabrielle Lafrere, who is the Insurance Manager at Prismian Group and Vice President of ANRA, the Italian Risk Management Association. But before we get started, I'd like to remind you that we welcome the questions, and you can do so by using the chat box that you find on your right-hand side of your screen, and I will be taking your question during the Q&A session after the interventions of the speakers. So I'd like to now turn to our speakers, and starting with you, Sabine. So ING Belgium publicly announced that it will be moving to a hybrid mode of work organization with 50% teleworking as of the post-COVID period. And this announcement has significant press coverage here in Belgium, I can say. So we would really be interested in knowing and hearing more about this decision. What was the situation before COVID? What has been the impact of COVID? What are the drivers to this decision? And what is exactly this decision and the consequences of it?
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for the opportunity to be a speaker for this live webinar. It's also good to see everyone back, I would say. And also thank you in the name of ING Belgium to be a speaker and to explain what our story is about hybrid mode and indeed it has been covered in the press because we are the first one, I dare to say, in Belgium to have a really convention and to be able to apply it very soon, and I will explain it certainly a little bit later. But maybe to go back a little bit in the past, before COVID, we already had at ING Belgium the possibility to work from home. It was maximum 1 day per week, and it was almost for everyone. Every employee. So we have about 7,000 people working or in the main buildings or also in branches. So it was also already allowed to work from home with all the connection, VPN connection that you need, of course, because the purpose is not that you get working from home without having the connection to your different systems, tools that you need to have to be able to work. Maybe some precision is that that possibility to work from home, of course, it was necessary to have an agreement with your manager and with your team. You don't decide on your own, well, today I'm not feeling well, I don't want to take the car or the train, and I will work from home. So it's really an agreement that you have to have with your manager and with your team colleagues. And it was really working very well. And then, of course, last year became the sanity crisis and the COVID-19. I don't know, I don't recall actually it was the same timing for all countries, but in Belgium, starting from March 15th, there was a confinement. So total confinement, all industry, branches, shops were closed. But actually at ING Belgium, we had kind of anticipated a little bit the situation because just the Friday the 13th, I don't know if it was just like that, but on Friday the 13th last year, we were already testing for 3,000 employees working from home. That was the first step we wanted to have. And it had been already decided before knowing the decision of the government to have that confinement. So that was the first test to and of course, starting from March 5th, it was completely good for everyone. Of course, the challenge and the risk were, and you can say immediately the first one you would think of, but certainly IT, because there is a big difference having some employees working from home, that you need the internet capacity, the IT capacity, and where you shift completely from one day to another, having almost 7,000 people working from home. So having all the connection, your system available for everyone, and available for everyone means employees, but also your clients. Because of course, the other most important risk and challenge was business must continue. We are a bank. So we are offering banking services of every type to individuals and to companies. So one of the biggest challenge and risk was business continuity. Taking also into account the fact that immediately after the confinement at the sector level, for the credit situation of our client, we had to prepare specific situation guarantee scheme by the state, but also payment holidays for our clients. So actually it meant much more work for the credit activity. So it meant also that some of our colleagues not being able to be present in branches because they were closed, no availability for the clients, they had to be shifted to a temporary other function. So it means also a risk. You have to train those people very quickly to be able to answer, for instance, to client on the phone or also remote. Another risk and challenge is really people. It's not the same working maybe one day from home when you want, and from the one day to another, every day working from home, because of course schools were closed, so you might need to take care of your child, of maybe your father, parents, and so on. So it was really difficult for some people to really be working from home, to have also the infrastructure. So that was also one of the key risks. Maybe another one, a little bit less important, but still, we have a patrimonium of many buildings scattered over Belgium. So it means that if you don't have your people in the buildings, they are empty for some times. So you have to take care of also of another type of maintenance and still security, because of course we are a bank. So these were really the challenges and the risk. These were of course covered by a crisis committee. We had two separate actually crisis committee, one operational crisis committee and one specific for the credit situation. And of course, risk managers were present. We made different type of assessment of the different situations. Maybe on the other side now, about opportunities. As you know, our strategy is to go much more digital. Digitization of our processes and our clients is really our strategy. And actually, the COVID situation pushed forward the use of the digital channels. Of course, if you want to continue to work and to provide services and clients to be also able to have their banking services active, you have to use much more the digital channels. We also developed remote advice teams. Usually you prefer to meet in person your banker. Is it for a mortgage, for investment? So we developed and train people to be able to give advice remotely, but also not only on the phone, but also by video. So it means also in terms of GDPR, some constraints and risks that you have to analyze. And certainly as opportunity, but it's really the test grandeur nature of your resilience. Resilience of the people, resilience also of your clients and of your systems. And actually, because it's still the case today, because we are kind of still remote way, it's okay. It's a positive conclusion. So that was actually in a nutshell how we dealt during the COVID. It's still COVID, but adapted for the moment. The main question that you have is that hybrid mode. It's what we call hybrid mode. Why the decision of ING Belgium to really go forward with hybrid mode? But basically, the COVID situation was a kind of accelerator of going much more deeper and further with the remote working, but it fits completely in the concept and the strategy of ING with well-being of our employees, but also sustainability. We are very proud actually to have very soon started with the discussion with the social partners. In March this year, we concluded different agreements with the social partners, excluded one, but really with them, to have what we call that hybrid mode. Hybrid mode means working from home, working from the office. We tell it's 50%. It's not an objective as such. It's an average. It's open to everyone, also people in branches. The reasoning is really that you have to make your analysis of when you need to have meetings, brainstormings. You need to socialize, of course. You need to network. You go to the office. When you need to concentrate, you need to read, you need to analyze, you need to read a paper. It's better that you do it from home. what does it mean home? It's not only where you live. It can be at a friend, at your mother's house. It can be also abroad in Europe. So it's also where we are, I think, we go very far in what we propose. We can be working not only from home, but abroad in Europe, but maximum 30 days per year, because otherwise you have tax consequences on it. No? Again, back to what I said, it's not that you decide on your own, I do what I want. Of course, everything is a question of discussion and agreement with the team, with the manager. What is best for everyone and what is best for ING and for the work you have to do. Because you can see, and it's also something that we have already heard, for some people, they cannot work from home. It's too difficult for their personal reasons. Others would like to be 100% working from home, but that's not always, well, it's the case still today, but that's not the best way, because of course we still need to see each other in person to have this different kind of discussion. You know, the chit chat at the coffee machine, or just the last discussion you have after a meeting. Those kind of discussions still are important, and you need to do that in person in the building. So really, that's really what we want to offer. And maybe in the discussion with the unions, because of course you can always have kind of reluctance from the unions telling, well, you offer something, but it's more in the interest of the company and less of the employees. So we really, ING really wants to put forward the well-being of the employees. It's really to have that work balance, private and professional life, to offer you also flexibility in the hours and where you work, but also to give you support and advice, because it's not to say, well, you work from home and you have to settle that yourself. So we are also offering advices on the ergonomy, how you best sit, how best you have your laptop or your screen. There will be also a specific budget allowed to everyone that can be spent over a period of 3 years to buy equipment for you at home. Is it a screen, a bigger screen? Is it a chair? Is it, I don't know what, but to be more comfortable at home. There is also a daily allowance because you are working from home, using your own internet, you're using your own light, electricity, and so on. And on the other side, about more back to the concept of sustainability, what we want is also a mobility pack. Usually, when you think about mobility, you think a car. And in Belgium, it's very important to have a company car. But in the mobility package that ING proposed, it's not only a car, but it's also a train, a bicycle, or you can also receive allowance when you go by foot. So you have the choice. The reasoning is also less people on the road, less CO2. And back to CO2, we are also renovating one of our main buildings downtown Brussels to make it 100% CO2 neutral. That one will be also equipped with that view of well-being and hybrid mode. So again, in a nutshell, it's really the sustainability concept as a whole for the people, for ING, but also for the community. Maybe one of the questions you might have is, okay, that's fine. And how is it going with the hybrid mode? Actually, because we are still, and Brussels is still in the red zone, we have not yet started the hybrid mode system. It has been recently announced it will be started on the 20th of September. But we already started a pilot phase during the summer period. The conclusion and the reaction that has been received is that for the majority of people, they see really an enhancement in their work environment and the way they can work. And negative, or is it neutral reaction, we only got 5 to 10% negative reactions. So we think that's really positive in terms of going forward. So we are really looking forward to starting the hybrid mode on the 20th of September. But also your question might be, okay, that's fine. Everything is settled. You know how you will start. But other terms, you are risk managers. What are the risks? What are the opportunities? Actually, I would more say challenges instead of risks. But challenges, and you might say, wow, why it is one? But the first challenge is to convince people to come back to the office. Because it's more than 1.5 years that people are working from home. Even now, we are still working from home with maximum 10% of the people going to the main buildings. I'm not speaking about branches. Branches, it's already a different situation when they are more present. But for the main buildings, it means actually more than 5,000 people. It's really a challenge for the moment to convince people to come back to the office. Because of course, after so many months, you are quite fine or acquainted to work from home. So that's the normality of today. So there will be a new normality when we start hybrid mode. And again, it will be also kind of back to the discussion about the agreement. When do we come to the office? By team, by person, if you work from home or abroad and so on. It means also in terms of people management, that's a risk, but that's an opportunity. You are not anymore control-based, but you base your management on trust. And also not anymore controlling all the time, but looking at the results of you're supposed to do that. Okay, what's the result? So that's also a shift in people management for some people and for some managers. For some it's easy, for others it's another scenario. It's much more difficult. Again, in terms of risk and challenges, and you might say, why? IT capacity, again, it's completely different to have that full remote capacity for everyone, not anymore for branches, but when you have your hybrid mode where maximum 50% of the people will be in the offices, so you have your direct connections, but it means that you will still be using all the remote capacities because, of course, your meetings are not always within your team, are also with your other colleagues from other departments, maybe working from home. So it's also, I would not say difficulty, but a risk that we have to check to still have the full continuity of the connection. It's not only calling. I suppose most of us, we know Zoom, we know MS Teams. We are used to not only speak, but to see each other, like today, but also to share documents on screen. Another opportunity, and certainly back to the concept of sustainability of ING, is really sustainable and well-being of the people. It's really what is meant within ING, that work balance. People must feel good, pleasant work environment at ING. And again, sustainability with the CO2 idea for the building and less people on the road. So that's a little bit in a nutshell. I know, Tiffany, that you also spoke about cybersecurity. I did not mention very specifically something about that because for the banking sector, yes, there are maybe much more or different types of phishing, claims of tentatives, but it's kind of a trend that we see for many years. So of course we had different messages to our clients, but we do it also at the sector level. Here in Belgium, via Fable Fin, is it via video or publicity or alerts in the media or for clients. So that's again, and I hope I did not spoke too much because I could be speaking about it for many minutes. Happy to hear what Laurence and Gabriela have to say, and certainly after the questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sabine, for this very interesting testimonial and also a very comprehensive one. It's interesting to see, you know, how remote working, you know, fit into the strategy of the company of well-being and sustainability. So it's more the opportunity side of it, which is really stressed. But thank you also for, you know, having, you know, this analysis of the challenges, as you call it, also linked to this new way of organizing the work. So we will now go to the panel discussion with Laurence and Gabriela. And I think the first question I'd like to ask both of you is a bit to start a little bit like Sabine did, and to go back to the period before COVID, so that we understand first of all better what was the situation post-COVID in terms of remote work in your companies, and so that we can base our discussion on that and see then what has been the impact of COVID, and then what are the plans. So Gabriela, maybe you want to start first?
Yes, thank you, Tiffen, and good afternoon to everyone. Let me start with the Italian picture before COVID-19. As ANRA, in cooperation with E.ON, we made an observatory on smart working with two surveys. The first launched at the beginning of the emergency and the second one after 6 months. Looking at the results, I can say you that in 2019, in Italy, smart working was present and absent in a very similar number of organizations. Those who already had applied it before the COVID emergency were 37%, while those who didn't use it in any way were 38%, so very similar the data. In 24% of companies, it was only partially used, and Prismian can be considered into this category of companies, only partially used. Generally allowed to mothers or to those who live very far from the offices. Considering this cultural adaptation to a new way of working to be one of the greatest obstacles to the introduction or to a greater diffusion of smart working before the emergency. For sure, COVID-19 has accelerated this transition. Lockdown restrictions around the world meant that those who had to work from home were forced to balance their professional lives with the personal one. Now we can say that the actual application of remote working had contributed in some way to debunking some false myths related to it, such as the possible decreases in productivity, for example, in which there was even a reverse trend, but had instead brought out initially underestimated problems. Maybe we will talk about these problems later. You are on mute, I think.
Sorry. Thank you, Gabriela. And Laurence, what was the situation before COVID at Electrolux? The same, I see a similar path between Sabine and Gabriela in the two companies. It was more on an occasional basis.
Yeah, definitely. And again, good afternoon, everyone. It was very, very occasional because many, I guess, or many know maybe Electrolux is a white good manufacturing company. So our base is really to produce white goods. So it's not possible to produce these goods from home. So we have about 42 factories in the world, and we have even more warehouses. So majority of people have to be at work and work from the place. And also it was not at all in the culture. So even though people would sometimes work remotely. It was not like Sabine said, agreed in an agreement. It was just because there were exceptional circumstances. So that was absolutely not in the culture. And you even had a kind of a bad conscience when you had to work from home because of this controlling aspect, Sabine, that you mentioned. It was more, if you are in the office, you work. If you are home, we don't know what you are doing. So this is kind of this culture that was pre-COVID. But of course, all this changed, and from one day to another, then again, that's like everywhere. We were sent home, and there you have really the two difference between the factory, the place where you have the factories, and the offices. In the factories, it was just the shutdown, and people had to stay home, and there was nothing to do. And then in the office, where there it's exactly what you did at ING. We had really the positive side of COVID is that it really boosted or it accelerated the IT development, where we had to be able to work simultaneously, all people. So in that sense, we had also this pre-date before everything closed down, so we were ready. And all the pressure, all the effort were made on the IT side to make sure that we could continue to work. And at the same time, there was a crisis group in place to make sure that we could go back to the factories as quickly as possible. And then, so before the COVID, I would say about 2%, maybe 5% of people could work partly remotely. Afterwards, and that we will tell afterwards, but there is a change, but it's still, even in the office, there will be a shift, and the shift will be like Sabine, but in the manufacturing company, we'll still keep this 2%. Because of the nature.
Yeah. So basically, if I can continue with you, Laurent, so if you can elaborate on the impacts, of course, of COVID for your organization, and maybe the plans for the future, or already the actions which have been put in place.
Yeah. So again, a big effort was made on the IT development, and then also there has been very quickly a shift in the culture. So during the COVID, there was no choice, and we had to trust people that they would perform in their job. So very quickly, the culture changed in the trust, exactly like you mentioned, Sabine. So people were trust that they were doing their job, and that will continue afterwards, because the positive side of having such a long pandemic is that culture have changed. It will not go back to the before COVID. So that's really established now. And then the flexibility part, we have also seen that there was a positive aspect of people being flexible, the well-being that is that Sabine mentioned also for at Electrolux. So it really we want to keep that well-being and the balance in the for our employees. But the big difference between ING and Electrolux is that it will only impact people in the office, and factories will still they work from the factories or the warehouse, and there we don't want to make big differences between the white and the blue collar. So if you are in a factory, you cannot work remotely, just to avoid this conflict between type of employees. When it comes to how it will evaluate, what we have done is we have sent. We don't want to decide something without having the pulse. So we have regularly, from the beginning of the pandemic up to now, we have sent regular surveys to the employees to understand first, is flexibility something that they want? How much do they want to have and to work remotely? So we are now establishing guidelines, and it's very much guidelines because we work in many countries, and of course we need to adapt depending on the culture, local legislation, etc. But we have a group guideline, and it's not as established as ING, but we are getting there. we are still in the pandemic. So, but up to now, we speak about a flexibility to work from home 40%, because we still believe that the interaction is in the office. We need to interact, and it's there you have creativity, and it's there that you need this creativity to be able to evaluate.
Thank you, Laurence. So 40%, it's what is in the pipeline, and compared to ING, which is 50%. Gabriela, so for Prysmian, so what has been then the impact of COVID, and what are the plans for the future? Are you more a 50%, a 40%?
I'll let you know. So the global presence of Prysmian has allowed us to have immediately evidence of what was happening in China before and closely after in the rest of the world. So to put in place prevention measures, putting people first. So starting from the end of January 2020, Prysmian has established a protocol to reduce the risk of infections by prohibiting travel to risk areas. So before the government decisions, and inviting countries to apply specific local health regulation. Then at the end of February, for all the employees, so white collars, was able to shift all the people to remote working over the space of a weekend. So without business disruption, because it was prepared to manage the crisis. So in the first period when we worked at home, we received many communication on how to best organize ourselves to work from home, training pills, some proposal of activities to be carried out online, cultural or recreational, and also psychological support if you need it. Updates on the situation and recommendation for our health were sent to us, I think, every day. And to overcome these challenges and make the new model work for all employees, Prysmian presented a plan with a very strong message. We are back together. So based on the trend of infection, we were invited to return to the office on a voluntary basis with a maximum presence of 30% per week. Currently, with a presence of 50%, but on a mandatory basis. So for our Back Together, Prysmian Group supported the people who were organizing their return to the office and focusing also with an attention on sustainability. And they thought of a green solution for employees, offering e-bikes at an advantageous price. So it was very good. I have my e-bike and I can tell you that it's very good. But looking at the future, the new working policies that will be gradually applied in the post-COVID era was shared by the management before the summer. The policy is driven by the conviction that the workplace play a key role in our life, so as professional and individuals. So being back at our sites strongly builds team spirit and also reinforces our social network to stimulate generation of innovation, ideas, and solutions for the business, as mentioned before from the other panelists. Our policy has the potential to reinforce our being one company, and after being impacted for a long time with the remote working, with the pandemic, we aim keeping this premium value for the future, while maintaining also a portion of our time for working remotely, as well as solution for flexible working time. So our solution will be 30% of remote working starting from the end of the emergency.
Okay, and if I understand well, so that's the focus is really on going back to the office to work with a flexibility which is allowed, basically.
Yes.
It's quite similar to Laurence as well. Huh? It's the policy is going back to work with a flexibility. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, thank you. And if we now zoom to the role of the risk manager and the profession. So how do you approach evaluating the risk and the opportunities from remote working? And how can a risk manager help their organization approach to remote work? Laurence, do you want to start?
Yeah, so there are many risks and opportunities related to HR, and remote working is just another way of working. But because it's very new, then of course we need to assess. And I like your word, Sabine. It's more the challenges than really risks, and we need to really analyze the challenges and see what are the impact and see the different scenarios, because they are still, it's very, very new for most of the organization. So as risk manager, what we need to do is really to try to understand the different scenarios by talking to different stakeholders. Of course, HR is very important, legal. I mean, we need to talk and also to talk to our peers, because we will have the support from external companies also to understand what risk do they see, which we might not have seen ourselves. So and what we could see from a direct risk, if I can say so, it's like from a strategic point of view, will remote work impact the performance of the organization? We have seen now it didn't impact in 2 years' time, but when it's on a long term, will people keep this engagement and be able to perform as much as they did, and will that affect or even increase the performance of the company? And then you have many internal risks, like we mentioned, maybe it's less for ING because you have already the support of the banking industry, but when it comes to manufacturing and Electrolux, information security and cyber are really a big threat. In our policy, we haven't defined what remote working would say, but we don't want, from what I have heard at least, we don't want people to work too far away, because the more you work far, maybe the more the control can be difficult to follow. So we really work on this cyber security and information security aspect. And then another aspect which is really important is the physical security of people. So the employer have the obligation to guarantee the safety of their employees when they are at work. How will that apply when people work from home? How can we guarantee security when they work during the working time? So this is really something that is important for our organization. And then last but not least, I mean, many studies have mentioned that high-performing companies have a strong culture. What will be the impact of people working remote? Will that have an impact on the culture, and will that have an impact on the performance of the company? So those are the few risks which we definitely need to tackle.
Thank you, Laurence. And what about you, Gabriela? Do you take a similar or a different approach?
Very similar. I think that in a lot of things, our companies, the mine and Florence, are very, very similar. So maybe I can give you a concrete example of risk and opportunity that we found. So the crisis has allowed us to demonstrate that IT and digitalization are fundamental elements in creating a competitive advantage. Companies that were not prepared for remote working are suffering quite a lot. In spite, the other one are able to absorb this shock better, no? So, but on the other side, there was also an increase of cybersecurity risk due to remote working. So, in fact, there has been a rise in cybercrime during the pandemic. I have read some articles with the 400% up compared with the previous year. So organizations need to be able to trust their employees to take the necessary steps to work in a safe way online. That protects both the employees and the organization data. So this example maybe can show as a risk and an opportunity are very, very linked
to one another, of course. No, cyber security is of course one of the main challenges linked to remote work, in addition to, of course, HR. And when we look at the opportunities, Laurence, what do you see as a key opportunity for Electrolux in the context of remote work?
Well, there, of course, sustainability is definitely our purpose. Is shaping living for the better by recreating taste, care, well-being in a sustainable way. Sustainable way. So, what more than remote working can help there? And I will not repeat the reasons, because I think it has been mentioned there. But it definitely is an opportunity. And then it's also attracting new expertise. We are now, before COVID, our company is moving from really transforming from traditional product to more connected product and digitalization, etc. So this requires new talent and new type of expertise, which we might not have close by, and all these people might have the will to have a work balance. So this flexibility will also give us the opportunity to attract these people. And then the increased efficiency, as Sabine said, just being able to work and focus on in silence when you need, and then interact with your team in other occasions. So it's really, it divides really your work in two, and you have the workspace that follows the type of activities that each employee has to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Gabriela, what about one of the key opportunities for your organization?
I think that one of the most important, it's about respect and accountability. So outcomes matter, and we know that matters. When we will be able to understand that smart working is more useful, we will have taken, I think, a big step forward. And I agree with Laurence also with the talent attraction. This is a topic very important in our HR department. I know that they are working a lot on it. And so we have, I think, a lot of opportunities from this crisis, starting from our professional lives, but also in our personal.
Okay, so yes, so talent attraction, retaining also talents, sustainability, these are some of the key opportunities in this context. I'm now going back to you, Sabine. So we can definitely see many commonalities between your three organizations and the approach to remote working, but also some subtle differences. Is there anything from what you heard from Laurence and Gabriela that you'd like to react on before we move to the Q&A?
Yeah, I can also understand, even though it's not exactly the same, but Laurence, when you spoke about no discrimination or no distinction, blue and white colors, of course, banking services is different, but it was also an attention that we had not to make too many differences between people going to the main buildings and the branches, or people in the network. So that's why also it's also possible for them, so our colleagues in branches, to also be working from home, but always back. Based on that analysis, they also need to have some administrative work or analysis of some documents. So that's also possible to do it from home. So that was also a reasoning we had within ING Belgium, without that distinction white-blue colors, but also the same reasoning. Also about the pulse survey, how do you feel? We also had that, because it's really important to have that feeling and that reaction. Something that I wanted to pinpoint also, because you were of course much more concerned about fraud and cyber security. I would insist on the fact, of course, confidentiality is of utmost importance for us. So working from home or abroad, we have been also reminding all the people about the confidentiality, not only about what we have as information for ourselves, but the information we have about our clients, of course. And when I speak of confidentiality, we can have confidential information, but also inside information. And there you touch on the market abuse. So that's also something that we have been insisting on during the COVID period, but it will be also embedded in the communication when we start with the hybrid mode, of course. Yeah.
Thank you, Sabine. So I'd like now to move to, well, the Q&A session. So it's your chance to submit questions using the chat box if you haven't done it already. And we will try to get to as many questions as we can in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So I will take the first questions that are coming in. So the first one is about, we spoke about well-being, and notably Sabine is one of the motto of your company. And there is a question about, the mental health and the stress. Have you noticed any increase in stress or mental health problem among your staff during remote work? And what is being done basically to make sure that in the future, this problem is better overcome, I would say.
Yeah, indeed. That's really something that we have been really attentive to. I spoke about those regular survey during the COVID periods where with very simple question. A survey, 5 minutes, no more than that. How do you feel? How was your day? How do you feel at the end of the day? Was it sustainable to you today? So all those kind of very quick, simple questions. To have a view. That was the first one. The second was really insisting on the different managers. So you are manager, but you have also, and more importantly, a people manager. So to really check and touch base with your people. How do you feel? How are you? How is the pressure? Do you can live with the pressure? Because of course we had very, very long days with very long weeks. So that was really insisting on. And on the other side, what we have at ING, and it's not only during COVID, it was also present, but it was much more elaborated. We have people, colleagues can contact, of course, prevention advisor, but we have external services where you can call, have meetings, have calls, have discussion about difficulties you might have in your professional life, but also in your private life. And it's free for the employees and completely confidential.
Mm-hmm. And Laurence and Gabriela, since you've got many workers in factories, did you face the same problem in terms of stress, maybe more being scared of being, going to the factory during the pandemic?
We did really for the factories we had really put guidelines in. We had a crisis group in place to really ensure safety. So for instance, not everyone could come at the same time, but you had shift in the teams. So and then we also measure the number of, not measure, but we followed the number of people who were sick or even hospitalized, and we gave a bit of a compensation for those who had been hospitalized. So that's one part, and the other part also for the office and also the factories is that we organized some sport and other meditation activities. So we really connected with external experts to have this online meditation course, etc. Just for everyone to be able to follow and continue this health part of their life.
Gabriela, anything to add regarding the well-being?
Very similar. Yes, yes, because we share a lot of our experience also before the webinar, and for me, for Laurence, I think that is very similar. So what I can add is that maybe the more impacted by the stress were the white collars, not the blue one.
Yeah. I fully understand. We have a question regarding, interesting one. What was something that you got wrong as part of remote work, and why, and how did you correct it? Anything that probably, in the company did not work out, or?
If I may, we had last summer also a back to the office period, but it was not mandatory. And it's also back to what I said also during my presentation. The challenge for the moment is to get people back to the office, because there can be different kinds of fears. It can be because you really like to be working from home, but they can be different kind of fears, still linked to the sanitary situation. You don't want to take the public transport. You don't want to go back to Brussels because there is more a red situation zone in Brussels. You are not sure that all the colleagues you will be working with are not contaminated. Do they have their vaccine? So that's really something that we have seen still today. But when we started with kind of a little bit more working back to the office, and it was not mandatory, but discussions about yes, but not now. When I'm more sure, or when I will get my vaccine. Those kind of, it's more fears, I would say.
Okay.
Where
and
we thought everyone would be running to the office to see each other back.
Yeah, and also to explain, give a reason why you have to come to the office if some tasks can be done remotely. So probably a reflection around what kind of activities need to be done at work, and what kind of activities can be done at home. What you mentioned also, Sabine, in your first intervention. So giving a purpose to coming to the office.
Yeah.
Anything else that you'd like to add, Laurence and Gabriela, or something that?
Very quickly, but for me it was to separate my personal life from work commitments and switch off at the end of the day, for sure.
It's also a challenge. Yeah, no, for sure. And then I think I will take the last question is about, how do you deal with working hours, since a lot of tendency to remote work is, I think, to working during the weekend. I think this is what I think it's about a question of the organization of the hours, which also sometimes can be a challenge when you are working from home, so how do you deal with that? Probably is there fixed time hours like at work that you need to be available, or everybody is free to organize the time as they want because it's based on results, or has it been an evolution?
There has been an evolution at Electrolux. It's really based on performance more than on timing, and this is the beauty of the flexibility, because then you can adapt. But what we have done, and it's like back to Sabine's point and intervention, is that we are really training the managers to make sure that they encourage people not to work more than they should. And also even our group HR, he explained that a meeting should end 10 minutes before the end when it's an hour's meeting. So 50 minutes meetings, for instance, or 25 instead of half an hour, just to give people the possibility to drink between two meetings or to stretch legs, And so we have those kind of rules which are now applicable and absolutely accepted. So we have put those rules in place. But of course, it's up to each individual to follow them, and that's difficult to check when you are home that you don't overwork. But I think these people have the same problem when they work from the office too.
Yeah, I think it's really a struggle that we also see at ING. You don't have really more borders or boundaries when you are working from home. If you start at 9 o'clock instead of 7, most of the people use their usual traffic time being working. So it's also back of one of the surveys that we had, and I know that we have now one of the HR manager dealing with what we need to do with too many emails, too many meetings, no lunch time, and so on and so on, where we need to have principles of rules applicable, because as you said, Laurence, you can have a policy, you can have rules, but then you need to apply them.
Yeah, and you need to be more structured in your way of working. Yeah. So it's liberty, freedom, but still you need to yourself be more structured. Yeah. So, well, this webinar is coming to an end. Sabine, Gabriela, Laurence, one final thought or closing remark. If I start with you, Gabriela.
Yes, I think that the changes that accompanies an exceptional situation like the COVID pandemic requires a huge cultural shift and coordination to be effective. So employees need to see leaders modeling a flexible work mentality and showing that people can and should set their own boundaries. Yes, is correct. I think that to continue this transition process, organization will have to invest in training and in the right technology, and also to attract and retain top talent, and with a flexible way to work, I think that will be possible. So I really appreciated the time we spent together to discuss about this topic, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabriela. Laurence, final thought?
Yes. So we are really in the beginning of this transformation, and the challenges and the opportunities that we see are based on the assumption that we are making today. But as risk manager, we really need to follow how this transformation will go, and what new assumption will come in the future, and make sure that we modify and we adapt with the challenges and the opportunities as the transformation will continue to develop.
Thank you, Laurence. And Sabine?
Yeah, I think that's one of the conclusion that we can have is really over the last months. It's really a very great and positive example of great resilience and adaptation for people, for companies, for everyone in all the different aspects. We were not used to that so broad. And I think that capacity of resilience and adaptation will be going and going. And faster over the next years, decades. Human beings we don't like change, but we adapt ourselves in a magnificent way.
Yes. So, well, thank you very much, Sabine, Gabriela, Laurence, for sharing your experience and your views on this topic. As I mentioned in the introduction, we will have another webinar where we will focus on the tools that we are working out with the project group. I hope that you all enjoyed the discussion. And speaking about resilience, FERMA will continue to explore the theme of resilience at the forthcoming virtual event, the FERMA Talks, which is taking place on the 11th and 12th of October. So registration is open, is free for everyone, and we will be looking at the different elements of building resilience for companies. We are also putting the finishing touches to our resilience survey report that we have conducted in partnership with McKinsey. So stay tuned, because this will be the topic of our next webinar. So thank you to all of you for joining, and see you soon.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Thank you all for attending.